Over editing is a massive problem for business owners. And are you one of those people that's spending hours editing ahs and ums out of your podcast, wanting to make it so clean and so professional? Don't do that. Don't do that anymore. Stop that completely. Stop that right now. And today we're going to talk about why people edit this way, how it has killed businesses and shows, and what you should edit out instead. So welcome to It's Not Just Talking, where we help coaches, consultants, and people who are the face of the business power their marketing through podcasting. I'm your executive producer, Vince Quinn, joined by Taylor Cradatis behind the scenes. And later in the show, we're going to talk about a smart podcast move by one of the world's biggest creators. But for now, let's talk over editing. So this whole thing of ahs and ums has been so ingrained into the podcast experience, and I've heard it taken to insane levels of obsession over the years. There was a point a couple of years ago, I talked to somebody, they had a 4-hour-long podcast, and they would go through 4 hours of conversation and edit out the ahs and ums, and it would take them days to produce this show. And they're asking us to do this editing work. And the quote was pretty damn expensive for them because they were an entertainment show, so no business behind it. And they were trying to edit out, hours worth of ahs and ums. And really, what was the value, right? And that's what people seem to believe, is there's this inherent value. It's going to make the show so much better that it's worth the effort. But is that really the case? And so let's go back in time a little bit, because when podcasting blows up, the early phase of this, yes, you have Joe Rogan, yes, there's Mark Maron, and there are interview style shows that are a little more casual, but there are a ton of shows, notable shows, that are well produced. And every single word is intentional. Everything is scripted. Everything is edited and edited down. They're taking out the ahs and ums. They're starting everything at this very precise point. And the amount of editing that goes into making a single episode is insane. I've done shows like that on my own with these independent projects, and it can take you 30 hours. And it literally took me 30 hours to do a 30-minute episode of a show. 30 hours. And is it great? Does it feel good when it's done? Yes, but at what cost? And so you really have to think about this as a business owner, because for podcasting to be in that documentary style for all of those years, that's a totally different animal. One, it's an entertainment medium. Two, it was an early medium. So these shows blew up a lot more than current shows do. And what you are seeing now is really a major market correction. So what you're finding is, look around you at all of these podcast production companies that have been either absorbed or cut down entirely or seen massive staff reductions. The documentary style is not profitable, not in the way that people thought. So when you go around and you're trying to make these smaller shows, smaller audiences, and paying so much for this super precise editing all across the board, it takes a lot of time. And again, there has to be value in that. And what has the transition been? It's been to more of the casual talk style shows, video shows. That's where it's gone. It's more informal. And I want to be clear about this because, one, I feel tremendously for all the people who do have that skill set. It's great. I came from that. I have experience there through radio things that I did and all my podcast work. I know what great editing, and I know what it feels like, but it's a sad truth of the matter, and you have to look at the landscape and acknowledge what it is. People don't want to pay, and corporations aren't paying anymore for that advanced kind of editing, because the landscape has changed and what people are consuming is different. So when you're spending all this time, and again, you're a business owner, you got to sell for yourself, you got to build these connections, you got to do other things. How valuable is it really to edit the ahs and ums out? Think about how much time that is. Does it drag you from maybe even getting episodes posted because you don't want to do that work afterwards? You're thinking, oh my God, yeah, okay, we're going to do this episode and I want to talk to that person, but man, I'm going to have to edit every single one. That's going to take me an hour and a half. It sucks. So don't do it. right? That's not what you're here for, and it's not what people expect. This is your marketing. This is relationship building. This is trust. If you're giving good value and you're doing that consistently, you are clear and you're top of mind, something we just talked about last episode, then when you have all of these things together, you're going to get your results. You're going to get more sales. You're going to build better relationships. You're going to have a bigger footprint. But people are more forgiving for the ahs and ums. And so don't obsess about that. Don't pay exorbitant fees to have that done. And frankly, there's some services out there that say they'll take it out for you. And when you do that, the sound quality gets worse. It loses the pacing. It feels choppy. There's clips in the audio. I mean, it sounds nice. Hey, it's AI and it'll take out the ahs and ums. And a lot of times it's not very good. So be cautious with that, with your time, with your money, and just with how you value that. Because Taylor Swift can go on new heights where they're not going to take out every single ah and and that video is probably getting millions upon millions of views. So if it's interesting, if it's engaging, if it's educational, people will pay attention. And so with that, what we're going to do next is we're going to talk about what's worth editing out right after this. If you're looking for more ways to grow your business through podcasting, sign up for the SBX newsletter. The link is right here in the show notes, and each week in your inbox, you're going to get tips, opinions, strategies, all the things that we talk about here on the show in your inbox. The SBX newsletter right here in the show notes. So what is worth editing out of a podcast? Because it's not the ahs and ums. I've spent plenty of time talking about that. What should you actually take out of your show to give it value, to make it sound good, to be the best version of the conversation? That's really the foundational point. So what is the best version of the conversation? And what does that look like? So here's a couple of things that you can consider when you want to edit a show and you want to make sure that it is as engaging and valuable as it can be for you, for your guest, for your audience, and do that every time. So one of the things, rambling. Let's start there because it's a big one. We see it a lot, and it's brutal. If you're sitting there and you're looking at your guest and you're going, well, they're 4 minutes into this answer, and it has nothing to do with the question that I asked at this point. I have no idea how we got here, and I'm just kind of waiting until they shut up. Yeah, been there. And probably done it once or twice. So I get it. Rambling is a massive problem. And if you are bored as the host of the show in that moment, while that person is looking at you and talking to you, make a note to cut that later. Okay? If that's the whole question, if that's 80% of the answer, whatever you need to do, because you don't owe it to your guest, or you don't owe it to even yourself or your co-host to include every single thing that's said. If it doesn't provide value, it makes it less entertaining, and it's getting people to tune out and think of something else. Because if your show's boring, what's going to happen is they're going to pull out their phone, they're going to start looking at something else. Your podcast is playing, your YouTube, your video's on the TV, whatever it might be. They're on Instagram now. They're starting to scroll around. They're looking at things on their phone, on the browser, and checking out websites. Like, you're losing them. So cut it. It's not worth it. Make sure you get rid of your rambling. So that is huge. Absolutely do that and be aggressive with that when you need to be. Now, the other thing is redundancy. And redundancy comes up a lot in podcasting. And what does that look like? So part of it can be certain phrases. People will give you an answer and they'll essentially repeat it back. So I told the guy that I was going to do it. And then we did this thing. So then, yeah, I'd already told him that I was going to do it. You don't need that. So if you're getting that kind of speech pattern, this is where listening really comes into play. This is part of your role as a host, especially if you don't have a team around you, is you need to think like an editor while you're hosting. And if you can feel that something in their speech pattern is redundant, they're saying things all the time again and again, then you do want to cut that out. Stories, the same thing. You might see redundancy with your story. And in that, people will do this thing. Will just say, yeah, so I talked to the guy, and when I talked to him, we did this thing, and it was so funny. And then you react to it, and then they'll tell the exact same story again. It happens way more than you think, as silly as it sounds, with quick stories. You will see this a lot if you look for it. And so be mindful of that. You don't need that story twice. They already told it. And it was kind of funny the first time, or kind of interesting the first time. But when they say it again, right after they just said it, it's kind of a waste of time. So get rid of it. Another thing might be just general thoughts or lines of conversation. There might be times where you're in the middle of an interview, and this can be especially the case in longer interviews, where if you're talking for an hour and a half, there's times where you might ask a question that ends up essentially leading to the same door. And so they give you an answer like, well, I mentioned this a little bit earlier, and it's like A, B, and C. It's really the exact same answer they gave earlier. So fine, you took a shot, you had curiosity, you asked the question, but it didn't get to the result you want. So that's redundancy. Get rid of it. Another thing is the overwhelming repetition. And this is the closest thing that you will get to ahs and ums during a recording that you should edit out. This is in conversation where they say, well, I was talking to this person, and, suddenly, well, we had this thing, and, like that. Now people are going to strangle that person. And once you pick up on it, you're going to want to strangle that person. So your job is to not make that a thing. And as much as you have to go and focus and edit some of that down, not all of that, you can't fix their speech entirely. It's not your job necessarily to do every bit of it and make them look spectacular, but you need to make it tolerable is really the goal. So if it's so much the way that somebody's speaking, it's so distracting that you have to do something about it, then do something about it. And it's up to you or your editor, whatever you've got, to make the judgment call on how often to do that. Because if people are picking up on that tick, it can drive them crazy, and that's going to make them tune out. And you don't want that. So that's really important. Now, another thing is for things to edit out. It's what I like to call that extra step. And sometimes in conversation, you go off track a little bit, and it feels natural, and it is fun, and you go down that road and you really enjoy it. But as much as you're getting some value and people are willing to go for the ride, there gets to a point where you just get a little too into that part of the conversation, and you ask one more question or give one more opinion that just takes the conversation a step too far for too long. And this is a harder thing to identify because you're in that moment really enjoying things. So this is a harder one to pick up, and you have to pay attention a little bit more in post. It takes time to build up the ear for this. But if you get to that point where you feel like you're really off topic for a long time, chances are you took that extra step. Try to figure out when that was and just cut it out and move on to the next question. So that's a big one. And then some of the other things are really like recording interruptions. So if something happens and, the mailman shows up and the dog's barking at your guest's house, then yeah, like, okay, it's okay to stop for a moment and let them deal with that and then edit that out and get back to work. But if it's funny, maybe leave it in. So you got to play that a little bit. I like the chaos and natural element of things, so I tend to leave that stuff in if it works. But obviously, if it's a dead stop in the show, make sure you're marking those things somehow, some way, and then editing it out later. And outright mistakes. If you're saying your guest's name wrong up front, or you're giving them the wrong title, if you forget to say something at the end of the show and you want to do that again, like there's times where I really don't recommend taking something twice during the episode because it gets distracting and you might retake things into oblivion. You butcher the show because you're spending so much time. Well, let me take that thought again. Well, let me take that intro again. Well, let me set that up again. And it really detracts from things. So it makes the process worse. Don't do it. But if there are things that are blatant and really important and you got to have that thing right, then cut it out. This can also be statistical references. Maybe you have an idea of there was this, this story about this thing, and you go back to double check what you were saying on the show to make sure you were right, and you weren't. Well, then cut it out. But other than that, and to recap these things: rambling, redundancy, overwhelming repetition, taking that extra step, recording interruptions, and outright mistakes. Those are the things that you really want to think about with editing. And anything else, the ahs and ums in particular, is overrated. People are used to hearing everybody they talk with speak that way. So it is natural. And you just need to make sure it's not distracting. So in just one moment, I want to get a little bit more into this really brilliant and bold, I did not expect this at all, podcast strategy that I saw from one of the best creators out there. And especially as a business owner, you should be at least aware of this guy. We're going to talk about that in a moment. But if you're looking for help with your content and you're trying to figure out this editing process is killing you, that's a real problem. That's why I wanted to talk about it today. I think it's really important. And when I talk to business owners on these Compass calls, that is one of the common problems that I get is editing is eating up so much of their time and they don't know what to do. So let's talk about that. I'm here to help you. And so Compass Call is a free 30-minute conversation that allows me and you to deep dive into a very specific problem or couple of problems that you have, talk about growth opportunities, and we don't waste any time. So if you want a really simple, efficient, practical, and clean 30 minutes of conversation with me one-on-one for free, all you got to do is go to freepodcasthelp.com. So hit up freepodcasthelp.com, schedule your free 30-minute Compass call, and let's get you moving in the right direction. So with that, we're going to talk a little bit about Alex Hormozi. Now, this is one of those guys that I tend to binge him for a while, and then I go away for a little bit, and I check out some other stuff, and then I inevitably come back and get into the Hormozi vortex, if you will. And part of that is he's not just a brilliant business guy because he knows everything about sales, all the different systems. He's committed everything in his life around sales strategy and every element of that process. But he's obsessed with content and how content plays into the sales that he's doing. So he's very intentional with what the video looks like and how he edits things and how he introduces things and what his thumbnails are. So if you're just looking for a reference of who is somebody that makes content really well on a business level, check out Alex Hormozi. I'd absolutely recommend it. I can't recommend him enough. But with that, what's particularly interesting now is he released a new book, and it's called $100 Million Money Models. And the basic idea is, what are these strategies where when you're talking to a client, you have a certain path that you can take them on to land a sale. That's the basic idea of it. And if you want to check it out, you can go to his podcast feed. And this is the interesting thing. It's on his podcast feed. It's not an audiobook sold differently. He decided that he was going to record this whole thing, put all the chapters together and everything else, put it on his podcast feed for free, and give it to everybody. This is one of the biggest creators on the planet with a massive following, and he's sales-oriented. So when he does that, you have to take a minute and go like, whoa, what is that about? There's some lesson to learn here. And what I've realized is the brilliance of doing this. So here's the value of this. And you might have some strategy of this already in your business. This book is a lead magnet. Probably done the same thing. A lot of us have lead magnets, right? So this book is one, this audio book, and he's put it on the podcast feed. So now, as he's making this big announcement, he's got his newsletter, he's got the YouTube channel, he's got everything else that he makes, all these other businesses that he owns, a million ways to get the word out, public appearances, at press releases, everything. When people go to that audiobook to find it, they're going to his podcast feed. His podcast feed is already incredibly popular. He's selling his own services, his own products, all of those things on that feed, and now he's introducing more people to it. He's getting more people to check out this book on his feed. So now they're getting in the habit of going to it. And along the way, what does he have? He has video courses that you can sign up for. They're mentioned in the book, and the links are in the description. You can go to different things on his website. You can go to some of the other services that he's got. He has a community building program called School. Like, all of this stuff is through making the book available for free. So we're looking at a guy that is one of the biggest sales-minded people on the planet, who judges every single margin to the cent, has a million philosophies for the best ways to maximize those margins and do it consistently, and he's decided putting that book out for free is a bigger value. And that's pretty amazing. I mean, it tells you how things have changed with books, how people view that, and it shows you the value of the podcast feed. So it's amazing. And think about that for yourself. For example, if you have a book already, maybe that's worth putting on the feed. If it's a lead generator for you, why isn't it on the feed? Make that a playlist within the feed, on your YouTube channel, whatever it might be. Like, there's things that you can do to get more out of that book by making it available and now introducing people to the other content that you have. It's really smart. And the interesting thing is, too, and he does this early in the first chapter, what he said is, for me, I have a hard time paying attention. So what I tend to do is I have the audiobook and I listen to that, but I listen to it while I'm reading. And you can see how smart that is, because what he's saying is, yes, this is a free audiobook, but if you're looking to retain this to the best level and read the same way that I do and retain this as the best as you can, well, you should buy the book too. And you can go do that. So funny enough for me, I did buy the book. And I do have the audiobook, and I am going through that, and I'm waiting for the book to come in, so I haven't done it together yet, but I'm going to give it a try. And so it's a really interesting thing. And I'm saying this is a guy who's now bought from him. So he's built trust. I've listened to his stuff a long time over the years. I've learned a lot from him. I trust his opinion on things. He's got proof a billion times over and in $1 billion. And so now he's got a book. He's got an audio book. I've been around all those things. It's easy to see the audio book. I want the book. I bought the book. So incredible. But this is where things are moving. This is the kind of value that you can get. These are the ways that all of this content that you make intermingles. So it's just absolutely brilliant, something you should consider. And again, go check out that book. So with that, thank you for checking out this show. I mean, we put a ton of time in to make sure that we're giving you that same kind of value and trust. Like, this really matters to us, and I hope that's clear. So if you've made it through this far and gotten to the end of this episode, the best way that you can thank us in this moment is just a simple 5-star review. That's it. Just want to know that you made it here, that it was worth your time, that you enjoyed the episode. And all you got to do is Apple, Spotify, wherever you're listening, give us 5 stars and let us know why. So that would be a huge help. But in the meantime, appreciate you. Hope everything is going well for you and your business, and we'll talk to you soon.